Hi, I'm Randy Nesse from the Center for Evolutionary Medicine at Arizona State University. Our guest today is Barbara Natterson-Horowitz from UCLA, a real cardiologist and a real evolutionary biologist too. So glad you're here today.
I'm happy to be here.
So not every cardiologist gets deep into evolutionary theory. How did it happen to you?
So I've been practicing cardiology and particularly cardiac imaging. That's my specialty for many years, over 20 years. And then one day I got a telephone call from one of the veterinarians at the Los Angeles Zoo. And zoo vets take great care of their patients. They're board certified. But from time to time, they reach into the human medical community for certain expertise. And I was one of these lucky physicians that got that call. And anyway, they had a chimpanzee who had woken up with a facial droop, and they were worried that she'd had a stroke. So they asked if I'd come out and image her heart to see whether I could find a cause for this.
Because a stroke might have been from a blood clot in the heart.
It could be, and we do that on human beings all the time when there's a suspected stroke. So I'd done this procedure thousands of times, drove to the LA Zoo, and had this remarkable experience. I mean, it was, can you imagine, after decades taking care of human patients, it was a thrill. But it wasn't just being there that day. I then got called a couple of weeks later for an orangutan who was short of breath, and then there was a sea lion, a California sea lion, who had swelling, edema, and I started going to the zoo a fair amount. And when I was there, I started listening to the veterinarians on their rounds, right? And at the human hospital, we go on rounds and we talk about our, Mrs. Smith has breast cancer and Mr. Jones has heart failure and etc. And I'm listening to them on their rounds, and they are discussing the management of, metastatic breast cancer in a lion, and the management of brittle diabetes in a marmoset, and the management of compulsive disorders in a bear. And I'm listening to these doctors talking about the management of essentially the same medical problems that I've been taking care of in my human patients for decades. And I'm realizing that despite all of my training and all of my degrees, I had so little knowledge of the naturally occurring, that is spontaneously occurring diseases of non-human animals. And I specifically did not realize how much overlap there were in the diseases between humans and non-human animals. So that
your
got me started.
curiosity got you going and you couldn't control it.
Well, it's sort of true. I mean, when you start, first of all, it was incredibly exciting to meet these veterinarians, be with them, assist them. They're they're great doctors. And unlike human doctors, when we go to medical school, we are taught about one species, Homo sapiens. We learn a lot about Homo sapiens. But vets go to vet school and they need to learn, physiology and anatomy and pathophysiology, but of amphibians and reptiles and mammals and birds and sometimes even insects. And they have this comparative perspective. And 100 years ago in medicine, physicians were taught in a comparative way. My dad is 93 years old. He is a physician. And when he went to medical school, they were taught comparatively. But sometime between then and now, that's been lost. So being at the zoo was great fun, meeting the vets, and I started going to veterinary conferences and reading their literature.
So when I give lectures, a veterinary audience always gets it much more quickly.
They do.
Than an audience of physicians.
Because they're taught comparatively.
And you've written a book that has really moved all this much further and brought this to a large audience in a very sophisticated way. I'd like to go on and talk about that in just a minute.